Today, we're diving into the core argument of a truly paradigm-shifting book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, by the historian and activist Walter Rodney. Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time. So let's start with a question you've probably heard, or maybe even asked yourself. Why is Africa so often talked about as being historically, underdeveloped? The common story we're told is that it was always kind of lagging behind, just waiting for Europe to show up and kickstart things. But here's the thing. That story, it's a myth. It completely brushes past Africa's own rich history of development, and maybe more importantly, it totally hides the very active role that outside forces played in changing its path. And this is where Walter Rodney comes in, with a totally radical reframing of this whole idea. He basically argues that we've been using the wrong words this whole time, and because of that, we've been asking the completely wrong questions. And this, right here, is the core of his entire argument. See, we usually say Africa was underdeveloped, like it was just a passive state of being, a starting point. But Rodney flips this completely. He argues Africa was underdeveloped. That's an active verb, something that was done to it. It was a process. And that's the key takeaway. Underdevelopment isn't where things started. It's the end result of a very specific relationship. Rodney's whole point is that the development of Western Europe and the underdevelopment of Africa were really just two sides of the exact same coin. One process that systematically made one continent rich at the direct expense of another. So you're probably asking, okay, how did that actually happen? Well, Rodney points to a few key mechanisms. Think of them as the engine that drove this whole process. Let's break down 4 of the big ones. First up, colonial extraction. And you've got to understand, this was the entire point of the colonial system. It wasn't about helping or modernizing. It was a machine built for one purpose: to suck wealth, minerals, crops, pure cash out of Africa and send it straight back to Europe. Next, and this is just absolutely foundational, was slave labor. The slave trade was so much more than a horrific human tragedy. It was a gigantic transfer of economic power. Millions of Africa's strongest, most skilled people were stolen from their homes, and their forced labor was used to build the wealth that literally fueled the economic revolutions in Europe and the Americas. Third, they engineered dependency. Local African economies, which were diverse and self-sufficient, were systematically dismantled. They were rebuilt to do just one thing: serve Europe's needs. This meant forcing them to grow a single crop for export, crushing local craftspeople, and making them totally reliant on buying expensive European goods. It basically blocked any chance of their own industrialization. And finally, there's what's called surplus transfer. Just think of this as a constant, non-stop financial drain. All the value, all the profit that was generated in Africa by African labor and from African resources didn't stay there. Nope. It just flowed right back out through company profits, through loan interest, and through trade deals that were anything but fair. A really simple way to picture this entire thing is to imagine a healthy, growing tree. Now imagine someone coming along and just stripping that tree of all its roots, and then grafting those roots onto another tree. All the nutrients, all the potential, all the resources were siphoned away, not just to stunt the first tree, but to make the second one grow unnaturally tall. So why does looking at it this way matter so much, especially today? Because, it fundamentally changes the whole conversation. It shifts it away from ideas of charity and aid and moves it towards ideas of justice and accountability. Rodney himself just puts it so clearly. He said, colonialism was not merely a system of exploitation, but one whose essential purpose was to repatriate the profits to the so-called mother country. There was a purpose, and that purpose was extraction. So if we really take in what Rodney is saying, that underdevelopment isn't some natural starting point, but an active historical process, then what does that actually mean when it comes to responsibility? And what could repair even look like? That is the profound question this perspective forces every single one of us to confront. This entire analysis is drawn from that powerful book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, by Walter Rodney. We honestly can't recommend it enough. Go find a copy or check it out from your local library. For the full, long-form deep dive into this book and its ideas, follow the link in the description. If you enjoy systems-level analysis like this, please subscribe and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.